All right, hello everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Just to get an idea of who has joined us here for the YES Alumni Grants webinar, feel free to put in the chat box your name and what country you're from. If you want to also put where you were hosted, that's also great as well. Hi, Jimmy. Where are you from? Don't forget that part. All right. Oh, all right, well, we will get started. Feel free to go ahead and chime in on where you're from and where you were hosted. Just to let you know a few things in advance, I do have question breaks built into the webinar, but you can type in your questions at any time and we can address them once we get to the question break time. I will also be reading each slide to accommodate any participants who might be blind or have low vision. And so let's get started. All right, so there's going to be two components to the webinar. We're going to talk about general proposal writing as well as specifics about the YES Alumni Grants program. So proposal writing. Writing a proposal is getting your idea to reality. So let's take a quick poll. How many of you all have written a proposal before? All right, I think we can probably close the poll now. All right, so 2/3 of our attendees have written a proposal before. Fantastic. All right, so there are different kinds of proposals that you may write. You might write proposals to do local YES alumni activities. Obviously, if you apply for a YES Alumni Grant, you're going to write a proposal for that. The State Department also has grants, or you might have other proposals that you do for your own work. So going through the proposal writing process, it can be very beneficial even if you don't need a written proposal. It can help you organize your ideas and get a stronger sense of what you're trying to accomplish. And so to share a few best practices. The most important part about a proposal is that you answer all 6 of the questions. Sorry, I was thinking about the 5 W's. So the 5 W's and the how of who, what, when, where, why, and how. If you make sure that you are hitting all of these points, then you are ensuring that your proposal reviewer knows exactly what you're trying to accomplish. So you want to address, like, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Where did you learn about the problem, and who defined it? What does your project solve or improve on about that problem? And how are you going to know whether or not your project was successful? So conception and planning, the project proposal states the vision and the elements of a project that will guide you in project implementation. The proposal should be clearly stated and updated as necessary. Within your proposal, you want to explain what tools you're going to use and why, which communities will your project benefit? So who are your project beneficiaries or participants? How many beneficiaries, volunteers, etc., do you plan on including in your project? What are the costs associated with your project? And what is your project timeline? And in your timeline, you want to include from the planning stage all the way to the follow-up, not just your main events. Is there local buy-in? Do you have other organizations that you can partner with, or other people in the community who are supporting your project? Who are your partners, and what are the risks? You do need to always think about risk management and how to mitigate those risks. Okay, so let's talk a minute about goals and objectives. And we're going to have one more poll for those of us who are joining from Zoom. Can we launch the poll? Now, I want you to figure out, what goal do you think is more likely to result in success? Okay, I think we can go ahead and close the poll now. Ooh, a 50-50 split. So we're actually, the goal that I believe would actually result in more success would be number 2, because it's a SMART goal. SMART goals, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So in our poll, the second option gives us an exact number of times we plan to volunteer for a specific period of time in 2020. So, and here's another example. I'm taking this from the YES Inclusivity workshop that we held in Ghana. The goal is very specific. It says exactly how many people they plan to train. It's time bound by the end of the workshop. And it's also achievable and realistic. So the more specific you can make your goals, the better. And so you're going to set goals for your project, and those goals should be outlined in any project proposal that you write. Okay, so moving on to considering risks. So you need to think about any potential challenges, obstacles, or dangers associated with your project, and deciding if you have a plan in place in case those risks become a reality. And then you also need to think, many times we approach things with very good intentions, but sometimes you actually can create more harm than good if you're not thinking through the big picture results of your actions. So we do ask that you consider risks in project proposals. So for example, and please type into the chat box, or you can add comments on Facebook Live. Imagine my project idea is to implement a summer camp for middle school students. What are some of the risks I might face, and how can I plan or prepare for those risks? And again, feel free to type in the chat box or make comments on Facebook Live. All right. Someone said someone getting hurt. Exactly. So someone could get hurt in a camp with middle school students. So what are some things that you can do ahead to plan for those risks? Another participant said risks might be safety related or management related. Good. These are excellent ideas. Okay. Someone said have mentors take care of their group of students. So that is a good plan. It's a good plan to have mentors taking care or stay away from risky areas. But what's your plan if someone gets hurt? So you can do all the prevention that you want, but what about when someone gets hurt? How do you plan ahead for that? Great. So Jimmy said professional training ahead of time, backup plans to implement in case the original plan failed, or parents' numbers. And Mohammed said have a member that's informed on first aid. That's great. Yes, exactly. So having someone on your team who knows first aid. Um, also, also it can be as simple as knowing where the closest hospital or the closest doctor's office is. Having a first aid kit on hand. Maybe someone getting hurt isn't something that requires a doctor. Maybe they just need a Band-Aid. But having these plans in place and having things on hand to mitigate risk are important. All right, let's move on. So after you've considered your risks, you should revise your proposal plan. You should go back to your goals and deliverables and make sure that they account for any risks that you might face. Another important part of a proposal is a communication plan. So when you're conducting a grant project, you're going to have a number of different people that you need to communicate with. You'll have to communicate with your funder. You also need to you need to promote your project on social media. So this is another part of your proposal that you're going to outline a communication plan and build it out in your timeline. Everything from informing the community of the project you plan and recruiting participants. If your project involves participants or other volunteers. So you need to think about how you're going to communicate about your project large and wide. Okay, so partnerships and stakeholders. Oftentimes grant projects will have partnerships and stakeholders. Can you think of who are some possible project partners you might have? And you can just type it into the chat box. All right, so Jimmy said NGOs, yes. Other like nonprofit organizations are often partners in grant projects. Farid said a local government, yes, that's great. Excellent. So this is just a little diagram. It's silly, but it kind of just illustrates all the different people who might be involved in your project. Everything from, your local your contacts, like your doctor, your veterinarian, from clubs you are involved in, or friends and the people that they bring into your project as well. All right, so monitoring and evaluation. Why do you think monitoring and evaluation is an important part of a grant proposal? Oh, sorry, I'm going to go back for a second to Musa has commented. Musa has already done a couple of YES Alumni Grant projects, and he's partnered with the U.S. Embassy, local youth organizations, international NGOs, and local businesses. Thank you for contributing, Musa. All right, so why do we do monitoring and evaluation on our projects? Or build them into our proposal, I should say. All right, I'm just going to move on. So monitoring and evaluation helps improve project performance and achieve results. You can improve current and future management of objectives and deliverables. So what are some tools we might use to monitor and evaluate a project? If anyone would like to contribute in the chat box. Great. Musa said surveys. Excellent. We've got set deadlines and keeping track of data. Great. Yeah, so at the end of a project, you can use surveys and evaluations and data that indicate the impact and the results of the project that you're doing, to ensure that you're on track and you're meeting those goals, those SMART goals that we talked about before. All right, to talk a little bit about reporting. So one part of having a proposal, or the end kind of result of a proposal, is that you do often have to report back to whoever is sponsoring or the stakeholders, the funders that you have done the work for. So in your reporting, you're making sure to report on your outputs, your milestones, any scheduling things that are happening, like any other events that are happening soon, any potential risks, or any setbacks that you might face. Oftentimes a project doesn't stay exactly according to plan, and you have to be flexible and ready to adjust your plan as needed. And so any setbacks like that should be reported to your funder. Okay, we're going to have a quick question break before we talk about YES Alumni Grants specifically. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, we will move on. If you do have any questions, just put them in the chat box and we will address them when we get to them. Okay, so we're going to talk specifically now about the YES Alumni Grants Program. The YES Alumni Grants Program is an opportunity for alumni of the YES program to contribute to the social, economic, and civic development of your countries. And it's an opportunity for you to design your own initiatives to make positive change in your community. So who can apply? Successful YES and YES Abroad participants may apply. The application is going to open on December 17th, which is next Tuesday, and it will remain open through January 31st of 2020. And you apply online via the ACE system at this link. We will post this link in other places and on YES social media, as well as the website. So you could find this link later if you can't write it down right now. That's totally fine. One other note is that YES Alumni Grant projects must be conducted in a YES country. That includes the US for YES Abroad participants. Okay. So the types of grants that we provide are group and individual grants. Group grants are up to $3,000, while individual grants are $250 maximum. Group grants are team projects that meet the goals of the YES program. All the people participating do not have to be YES alumni, but the applicant must be a YES alum and must be a project administrator, lead, or co-lead. And projects must take place in a YES country, as I mentioned before. So if you say, for example, you are from Senegal and you're living in Morocco, you are still able to apply for a YES grant because Morocco is a YES country. For individual grants, they're usually for smaller scale projects or for professional development opportunities. For example, like attending a conference or traveling to a conference. And to make your case for an individual grant, we really want to see your readiness to share what you've learned with other people and kind of spread the knowledge that you've been given. All right. So on an average, 20 projects are typically awarded per year. The alum is responsible for all the reporting and accounting. And some of the grant themes that we typically see are inclusion of persons with disabilities, interfaith dialogue and conflict resolution, entrepreneurship, women's and girls empowerment, English language and American culture, and media literacy. The reason that I have inclusion of persons with disabilities highlighted here is because this year we are going to be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This was an important piece of legislation that made access to jobs and more accessible access to buildings and many other things for people with disabilities. So the State Department has informed us that they really would like to see preference given to projects that involve persons with disabilities. So if this is something that you're passionate about, then this is something that we're going to be giving extra consideration to strong project proposals that involve disabilities awareness and inclusion and advocacy. So just something to think about for the coming year. Okay, a little bit about the timeline. So the grant application deadline is January 31st. If your application is approved, you'll be notified by June 1st, and your project could start as soon as July 1st and must be completed by March 31st of the following year, so March 31st of 2021. You will work directly with me to revise your project and budget. Typically, I generally will have follow-up questions or requests. For example, I might review a project and say, I really don't think it's feasible that you're going to have 50 participants. I think you need to cut that number down. Or I might look at it and say, we can't fund this part of your project, please reduce your budget by X number of dollars. So that's a common occurrence, and you should expect that. Typically, we try and get the funds to you within about a month of your project start date. And then the funds transfer can take up to 4 to 6 weeks, even sometimes. Reporting, depending on the length of your project, I may ask for interim reports beyond just your final report. That has to do with the reports that I have to make to the State Department. So if I need an update on your project so that I can report to them, I will ask you for that. The way the funding works is we provide 80% of the grant funds up front to you, and you get the remaining 20% once you have finished all of your final reporting and accounting. And you must save your receipts. And one part of your final reporting also is that you will write an article for the YES website. Okay, so how do we select? So what we look at when we're looking at a grant project is the objectives of your project. So how does the project contribute to the social, economic, and or civic development of your home country? Or how does the project contribute to the professional development of the alumna applying? We look at constituency. So does the applicant demonstrate the need for the project among the constituency it's intended to serve? Does the project benefit people from differing ethnic, religious, social, professional, and age groups? And does the proposal show respect for the target audience? You don't want to use words like ignorant, or instead use illiterate, or don't talk about people living in slums. Talk about people living in impoverished neighborhoods, for example. So also we look at feasibility. So have you thought out the financial aspect of your project? Is it realistic? Does the proposal include cost share? We love to see partner organizations or individuals involved in contributing to the project. And if you do have people contributing to your project, do you have letters of support from them indicating their participation? And finally, what will the results be of your project? So how realistic are your expectations in terms of laying out those results? What criteria will be used to evaluate the project? We want you collecting both qualitative and quantitative assessments. And also, how will you share the results with others? Do you have a plan in place to, for example, tell about your project on media, social media, or traditional media, for example? A few other considerations is that we do strongly recommend that you ask advice from your local YES office about the political, cultural, social feasibility of your project. This goes back to, again, being careful that you're being respectful of social norms in your area, that you're not going to put participants in danger for taking part in your project. And so you want to communicate with all affected partners about their expected level of involvement. If you have an organization that agrees to partner with you, you want to be very clear about what they're going to provide to you and how they're going to be involved in your project. Explain the project and its intended goals in detail to all affected parties to get buy-in. And again, keep abreast of the political and social situation in your country. Know about local laws involving NGOs, and also understand any banking and financial responsibility to your government authorities. You may have, depending on your country, you may have taxes that have to be paid in order to receive your grant funds. So it's your responsibility to be knowledgeable about these things. And finally, don't put yourself or anyone else in danger. Again, this goes back to risk mitigation and ensuring that you are thinking through any possible risks to both you, your project team, and your beneficiaries. Okay, who's not eligible to apply? If you work for any of the recruiting organizations of the YES program, you're not eligible to apply. Also, if you work for the US government, say if you work at the embassy or something like that, you're also not eligible to apply. Letters of support. So strong project applications have both partners and partners who provide a letter of support to indicate their involvement. So the letters must be in English, and it's fine for you to translate it if it's not in English. Must be on letterhead, and the letter needs to show that the partner is familiar with your project, and it also gives a monetary amount of their contribution toward your project. That doesn't mean that all project partners are contributing money directly, but if they are giving you goods or resources or someone's time, then the letter needs to indicate what that contribution would be worth in money terms. All right, so we're going to move on to talking about some of the different components of your project. So your project summary is one of the most important parts of your project. It's like a elevator speech. So I don't know how many of you all have heard about an elevator pitch or an elevator speech, but the idea is that you have a very short and all-encompassing summary of what you're talking about, and that you would be able to say that in the time it would take to ride up in an elevator. So if you're going, say, I don't know, 20 floors, that probably takes maybe 30 seconds or something. So you need to be able to get all of your ideas across in the time that it takes to ride the elevator. So obviously those ideas need to be concise and carefully planned, and it's a very all-encompassing description of your project, like a sales pitch. It needs to be short, but it also needs to be thorough. So, quick question for you all to type in the chat box. And Musa, I see your question, and I will come back to that. But when do you think you write your project summary? Or when do you develop your project summary as you're working through a proposal? Excellent, Farid and Musa. They both said at the very end, exactly. You need to develop all the other ideas of your project proposal first, and then after that, you can come up with a concise summary. Also, Musa asked, how many partners can you have? There really isn't a limit to how many partners you can have. The more partners, the better, because that means that more people support your project and that you have buy-in from the local community. Okay, so what should your project summary include? It should indicate who you are, what your concerns are, what you propose to do about those concerns, how you will do it, when will you start, finish, where will your activities be conducted, how much does it cost, how much are you requesting in grant funds, and how much cost share do you have, and how much you've already invested or intend to invest. And for that last point, it doesn't necessarily mean you're investing money. It can mean what you've invested in terms of your time and other activities that you've done. Okay, we're gonna have one more short exercise and followed by a poll. So I've got 2 project summaries to present to you. And again, I will go ahead and read them in full for any possible attendees who need, who it would help for me to read this. And then we'll have a poll. So the idea is you need to decide which is a better project summary. So the Kids Summer Camp Project is an activity that will be held on the weekend from Friday afternoon until noon Sunday. It will give more than 120 poor kids the opportunity to play games, learn things, and be taught some morals and manners. However, the main focus of the weekend will be on cooperation. These students have heard much from their parents and immediate communities about people who are different from them, but they have never interacted with them. They will build a foundation of cooperation and acceptance towards those who are different from them during the weekend. The Red Cross will be providing assistance and participating in the camp itself. This project will also involve YES alumni who will work and interact with other youths to share experiences. Or example number 2. I will lead a group of YES alumni to design and develop a 3-day children's summer camp for 120 children ages 6 to 12. I have experience working with children as I volunteer in my old elementary school as a tutor. The targeted participants are children from underprivileged neighborhoods around the capital city of my country, some of whom are homeless and some who have had to drop out of school. They have few opportunities to learn while having fun and generally do not have interaction with children who are from different religions or ethnic backgrounds. The camp would be an opportunity to play while learning, using games and activities that will develop confidence, communication skills, and knowledge of others who are different from them. I have developed a detailed curriculum, see attached, based on my experience and with the help of the International Committee of the Red Cross, who will partner with us on this project by providing materials and offering experienced resources for the camp. The budget requested is $1,980, and the ICRC will provide $200 in in-kind donations. So if we could launch our poll and decide which is the better project summary. Okay, I think we can probably close the poll now. Excellent, yes. So example 2 is definitely the better project summary. Why is that? You can type that in the chat box or comments if you are using Facebook. No ideas? So example number 2 gives a lot of specifics, tells it, in terms of dates and time, or sorry, like numbers of days for the camp, what ages the children were, Musa said it's very detailed. So did Josiane. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry if I said that incorrectly. It also, it tells exactly how much money is being requested, how much the partner is providing. It also tells like the background of the person. It says, like, I already have experience doing this because I volunteer in my old elementary school. And it also, it's more polite in terms of its language. I don't, if you remember from example 1, it talks about poor kids, whereas you don't want to think of your beneficiaries in that way. So exactly. Okay, so moving on. One aspect of the YES Alumni Grant application is that you must submit a social media plan. You want to think about what you will post, where you'll post it, and when. And posts should include not only your milestones, but the different phases of your project, like planning, implementation, and analysis. In order for the YES Alumni Grant program to continue, you need support from our funders, which is the U.S. Department of State, as you know. And social media really gives a great outlook to show the impact and get visibility on your projects. So you're showing that what you're doing is worth what the State Department is funding for your project and your program. All right, budgets. So budgets are also a very important part of your grant project proposal. So you'll include a budget narrative, which is like a paragraph that explains how you're spending the money, but you'll also include a line-by-line item that breaks down exactly what you're proposing to spend. Your budget needs to be really detailed. For example, you've got the item, a banner here to advertise your event. You wouldn't just put in the description advertising, $50. We need to know exactly what you're planning to buy. In this case, it's a banner. Or if you wouldn't have a line item, for example, that just says transportation. Like, we want to know what kind of transportation, how many people are being transported, and same thing for meals. Showing a breakdown of the cost per person for things like meals and snacks, give the project reviewer a good idea if your budget is realistic or not. Okay, so what can be funded and what cannot be funded? So the YES Alumni Grants program does not fund any technology equipment, alumni salaries, or anything that's a political activity for one specific candidate or party. And for that last point, just to give you an idea, let's say, for example, that you are really passionate about voting and you want to conduct an alumni grant project that encourages people to vote. That is fine. That's not the same thing as putting your grant funds behind a specific person who's running for an election in your country. There are also other items that YES Alumni Grants are not appropriate to fund too much of. And in this case, that's things like t-shirts, bags, banners, like promotional material like that, or construction materials like paint, or let's say trees. If you're doing a tree planting, your entire grant budget can't be for buying the trees, or other durable equipment or furniture. things that will still remain. When I say durable equipment, so for example, if you were doing a grant project for a school and it doesn't have any tables and chairs, your entire grant project cannot be purchasing tables and chairs to leave at that school. YES Alumni Grants are not like a source of donation, if you understand what I'm talking about. So these kinds of items cannot be more than 30% of your total budget. All right, so talking a little bit about in-kind donations or cost share. These can come from organizations or from individuals, and it will include things like goods, like equipment, furniture, space, including like maintenance and utilities, like electricity bill, for example, or refreshments that people bring to your meetings. It can also include people. So an organization can donate staffing, or individuals can volunteer to participate in your program or be a guest speaker, for example. It can also include services such as construction and renovation, or giving you a place to print the things you need for your program, or other public relations and promotional activities. When you do have someone who is willing to give you an in-kind donation or cost share for your project, you should have letters of support. Okay, so transferring the funds. After we go through the process of revising your proposal or budget and you accept the grant, as I said before, I try to send you the funds about a month before your project start date. Funds are sent to your local YES office unless there are special circumstances in which we send them directly to you. We'd have to work that out one-on-one. If the money is sent directly to you, you must have a US dollars bank account, and talk to your bank in advance to ensure that your account is set up to accept US dollars. And as I said before, 80% is sent on the initial wire transfer, and then after that, the 20% balance is sent after you finish all your final reporting and accounting. All right, so the grant evaluation of grant applications happens in multiple rounds. It starts with your local YES office, and then followed by the US recruiting organization, the US office of your recruiting organization, and then finally at American Councils. And like I said before, the final selection, it takes time, and there's usually follow-up requests. So if I do the final review of your application and I think you have a very strong application, but a few things need to be adjusted, I will reach out to you and ask you to amend your application before I approve it.